In today's passage, Jesus said that while the Old Testament commanded, "Do not swear falsely, but fulfill your vows to the Lord," he declared, "I tell you, do not swear at all." The reason was that people's oaths often led to various adverse consequences. In other words, the Lord knew all too well about people's false oaths. Those born with the corrupt, fallen nature of Adam often become adept at exaggeration, deceit, and concealment rather than speaking honestly. Particularly when interests are entangled, significant loss is possible, or one's image might be tarnished. Exaggeration and falsehood are invariably employed. Thus, people increasingly deceive one another, and find it impossible to trust each other. Thus, ultimately, no matter what oaths are sworn, people refuse to trust one another. That is why in today's passage, Jesus says, "Swear no oaths at all." What is an oath? It is attaching something to one's words to attach a proviso, in order to more strongly emphasize to the other party that one is speaking the truth. However, because people misuse oaths, the world has come to associate a strongly negative image with them rather than a positive one. This is largely because oaths are mobilized to conceal falsehood. Often, oaths are employed as a means to compel belief in one's words, by any means necessary. God knows full well about people's false oaths. God knew full well that his chosen people would easily swear oaths, then break them, and swear again. To prevent people from using oaths as a means to conceal their own falsehoods, God commanded, "Swear by the name of the Lord." Thus, in Deuteronomy chapter 6:13, it says, "Fear the Lord your God, serve him only and take your oaths in his name." Yet the people of Israel failed to keep even this. The Jews were a people who would break an oath made in God's name whenever circumstances suited them. Therefore, God added a more forceful prohibition. In Leviticus chapter 19:12, it states, "Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." One may swear before God without hesitation. Swearing is possible, but the problem is that often the oath is not kept. To avoid loss and save face in that moment, or to not miss out on gain, one breaks one's own oath. As a result, the name of God used in the oath is defiled. Then, not only our faith but also the name of God becomes a laughingstock. In the New Testament, we see an instance where Jesus rebuked the scribes for their discussion concerning oaths. In Matthew chapter 23:16, he declared, "Woe to you, blind guides! You say, if anyone swears by the temple, it means nothing. But anyone who swears by the gold of the temple is bound by that oath." These scribes, who claimed to be experts in studying the scriptures, asserted that if one swore by the temple, one need not keep the oath. But if one swore by the gold of the temple, one must keep it. Furthermore, they claimed that if one swore by God's altar, one need not keep the oath, but if one swore by the offering placed upon it, dedicated to God, one must keep it. Matthew chapter 23:18 states, "You also say, if anyone swears by the altar, it means nothing, but anyone who swears by the gift on the altar is bound by that oath." In response, Jesus said Matthew 23:19-22, "You blind men! Which is greater, the gift, or the altar that makes the gift sacred? Therefore, anyone who swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And anyone who swears by the temple swears by it, and by the one who dwells in it. And anyone who swears by heaven swears by God's throne, and by the one who sits on it." Observing this practice of attaching oaths according to their own convenience, Jesus declared in verses 34, 35, 36, "But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, 5, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black." It seems the scribes and people of that time were pondering how they might be freed from the weight of swearing by God's name. Thus, the solution they devised was to swear by heaven, or earth, or Jerusalem, or one's own head. Yet concerning this, Jesus commands unequivocally, "Swear not at all." Instead, as an alternative, in verse 37, he states, "All you need to say is simply, yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. If you know not, say thou knowest not. If thou knowest, say thou knowest." To pretend to know when thou knowest not, or to pretend not to know when thou knowest, is an evil deed. It springs from evil. God desires a world where things function well, even without any swearing of oaths whatsoever. He longs for a world where one can live sufficiently by merely saying, yes, no. It is a world where people do not speak falsely, where whatever anyone says is known to be true, so that even without other oaths, it is a world where trust prevails. So, how can we achieve a world without oaths? We must have the courage to speak honestly. We need a spirit of sacrifice, willing to bear loss. We need the resolve to turn away from visible gain. Only then will we be recognized as people whose word can be trusted. Firstly, Jesus commanded us not to make vain oaths before God. The Jews swore by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or their own heads to avoid making false oaths in God's name. Yet the Lord commands us to make no oaths whatsoever. For all creation belongs to God, and we have no control over anything. True believers must abandon the attitude of exploiting God's name or using oaths to guarantee their own credibility. Failing to keep an oath sworn in God's name ultimately amounts to taking the name of the Lord in vain. Exodus chapter 27 states, "You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name, because those who profess to believe in the Lord continually make empty oaths using God's name." Jesus said, "Simply do not swear at all." Do not swear at all means never swear at all. Why did he command this? Because humans are always prone to falsehood. As slaves to sin, living under its dominion, they cannot keep their oaths and may even set a snare for their own destruction. An oath is taking the name of the Lord in vain. The Pharisees did not hesitate to swear by the Lord's name. When people swear, they involve God's name as a means to extricate themselves from their difficult circumstances. Such actions cannot but be the sin of taking the holy name of God in vain. An oath is the final judgment in a dispute. Therefore, an oath must be the ultimate good and truth. Yet human wisdom and judgment are not perfect. Moreover, what was believed to be true is often proven false. Jephthah, going forth to a difficult war, vows and swears to God. He makes a most absurd vow. Judges chapter 11:30-31 states, "And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give the Ammonites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house, to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's. And I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." Jephthah vowed that if God helped him defeat the Ammonites in battle and he returned victorious, he would offer up as a burnt offering to God the very first person to come out of his house to greet him. However, when he returned victorious from the war, his only daughter was the first to run out and greet him. Jephthah's victory over his enemies was not due to his vow, but God's grace that granted him the victory. Yet Jephthah suffered a terrible loss because of that rash, ill-considered vow he made. He had brought upon himself the task of killing his own only daughter. Moreover, because human beings are frail creatures, they can easily break an oath. If people understood how fragile vessels they truly are, they would not commit the folly of making rash vows. Peter, though moments later he would be in a position to betray the Lord, Matthew chapter 26:33, declared, "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will." Never abandoning is the level of an oath. To swear over something that can easily be broken when the time comes is the most abhorrent thing. Only God knows the end of all things. Man knows nothing of what will happen in the days ahead. Thus, man falls into condemnation because of the oaths he has made. The people of Israel believed that once they swore by God's name, they must keep it no matter what happened. Saul, whilst at war with the Philistines, suddenly proclaimed a fast and made the people swear an oath. His son Jonathan was absent at the time and thus unaware of this oath. During the battle, whilst in the forest, he saw some honey and dipped the tip of his staff into it to eat. When Saul learned of this, he sought to kill Jonathan, because he had sworn by God's name. However, the people protested and he was unable to carry out the execution. Moreover, King Herod, delighted by the dance of Herodias' daughter, swore an oath, "If you ask for anything, even half my kingdom, I will give it to you." Upon hearing this, Herodias' daughter, after consulting her mother, demanded the head of John the Baptist. Herod, bound by his oath, had no choice but to kill the esteemed prophet, place his head on a platter, and hand it over to the girl. Through such biblical accounts, we see how thoroughly the people of Israel upheld oaths sworn in God's name. Their belief was that once words were spoken in God's name, they must be kept unconditionally, whether right or wrong. Such human oaths proved flawed, leading to numerous adverse consequences. Yet what is the spirit behind these oaths and vows? It remains fundamentally self-centered and human-centered. This is precisely why problems arise. When I must accomplish a task or overcome a difficulty, God is seen merely as an assistant or helper. Jesus teaches that the commandment concerning oaths can only be properly understood and kept when viewed strictly from a God-centered perspective. God is never a bystander or mere helper in our affairs. God actively intervenes in the affairs of this world and has a good plan for me. God is never one who remains passive. The people of Israel did not often swear by God's name, but they frequently swore by other things. When they did swear, they acted as if they would certainly keep their oath, yet once the moment passed, they made no effort to honor it. They swore by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or even their own heads instead of God. But when the time came to keep their oath, they broke it all too easily, saying things like, "I didn't swear by God's name, so what's the harm?" Secondly, we must abandon falsehood and hypocrisy, living a life of truth. The habit of seeking trust through falsehood ultimately breeds hypocrisy and distrust. Believers must live truthful and transparent lives. Yet, neglecting this, they have often used oaths to dress up their words or as a means to conceal insincere motives. Yet Jesus reminds us that man is powerless, unable even to make a single hair white or black. The people of Israel, seeking to cleverly evade the law concerning oaths, avoided making true vows by swearing by heaven or earth, the king, or their own heads instead of the name of the Lord. They committed falsehood and hypocrisy, claiming these were exceptions to the law of oaths. Yet in the sight of God, all this was a profanation of the holy name of God. Therefore, Jesus pointed out the false and hypocritical empty oaths of such people. Their oaths, whatever they were made by, were connected to God. Therefore, whatever human reason one swears by, it all becomes an oath sworn before God. Thus, it cannot be evaded. We may evade the binding force of human law, but before God, it is futile. Therefore, we must become truthful people. We must live sincerely, ensuring our words and actions align. Yet, it must be understood here that Jesus did not abolish true oaths. The Lord himself kept his oath in court. Matthew chapter 26:63 states, "But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God, tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." Then Jesus spoke the truth before the high priest. Matthew chapter 26:64 records, "You have said so," Jesus replied. Yet, even though he spoke the truth by swearing in the name of God, the high priest in Matthew chapter 26:65 said, "Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look, now you have heard the blasphemy." The high priest mistook Jesus for one who, like themselves, made false oaths. Though Jesus had declared by God's oath that he was the Son of God, the Christ, they misunderstood him as belonging to the same category as those who do not keep their oaths. Thus, there is a true oath. God himself swore by his own name. Hebrews chapter 6:13 states, "When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself." Paul also swore by God as his witness that his writing was true. 2 Corinthians chapter 1:23 states, "I call God as my witness and I stake my life on it that it was in order to spare you that I did not return to Corinth." Thus, it is not that we should not make such true oaths, but that false oaths and meaningless, empty vows are forbidden. 34, 35, 36. "But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all. Either by heaven, for it is God's throne, 5, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black." We must strive to be truthful in our speech. Thus, Jesus teaches that we must cultivate the habit of speaking absolute truth, requiring no oath whatsoever to confirm anything. If we habitually utter unnecessary oaths, our sense of truth becomes dulled. Those who habitually swear by heaven and earth never regard the substance of such oaths as binding. And once they become accustomed to falsehood in this manner, they require ever greater and more plausible oaths, until they are finally corrupted by every form of depravity. Therefore, we must strive to speak the truth. The less truthful a person is, the more frequently and exaggeratedly they make vain oaths. If we speak the truth and also practice it faithfully, then no oath or pledge becomes necessary for us. It is said that Jews typically swear by 4 things when making an oath. First, they swear by heaven. This seems similar in both the East and the West. Because their own righteousness is lacking, they invoke the God in heaven and swear by heaven. Yet, despite swearing by heaven, the falsehood is often quickly exposed. Therefore, swearing by heaven is wrong. Why is swearing by heaven wrong? Today's text verse 34 states, "Do not swear an oath at all either by heaven, for it is God's throne." Isaiah chapter 66:1 declares, "Heaven is my throne." Since God himself is clearly watching, one cannot make a false oath by heaven. Nor should one swear by the earth. In verse 35, it says, "Or by the earth, for it is his footstool." The entire earth is under God's providence, there is no place not governed by God. Therefore, he commands us not to swear by the earth either. And in verse 35, it says, "Or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king." This means we must not make false oaths by the temple where God dwells. For that too is where God dwells. Indeed, verse 36 states, "And do not swear by your head." This forbids swearing by one's own head. We often hear people swear, saying, "If I am lying, may my temple be torn down." Why is this forbidden? "For you cannot make one hair white or black. For we are frail beings, unable to turn even a single hair white or black at will." So what does this mean? When you swear an oath, do not invoke heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or your own head to make your oath appear true. Thirdly, we must uphold the faithfulness of a Christian's words. In verse 37, it says, "All you need to say is simply, yes or no, anything beyond this comes from the evil one." It says, "But let your speech be," all you need to say is simply, yes or no. A person of faith must be someone whose very words are trusted, without needing to rely on oaths. Our words reveal the character of Christ. Therefore, the faithfulness of one's words stems directly from the faithfulness of one's life. Thus, believers must live as people who speak according to God's truth and love. Hence, Ephesians chapter 4:25 states, "Therefore each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body." What is the true meaning of the oath that Jesus intended? It is that we must faithfully keep our own words. Jesus is not now altering the Old Testament law to teach a new law. The Lord, as the one who fulfills the law, is rebuking their hypocrisy in order to perfect the law. As the custom of swearing degenerated over time, instead of swearing by God's name, people began to swear by things associated with God, such as heaven or earth, Jerusalem, or the altar. This was done not with any genuine intention to keep the promise or to make a false oath, but rather to avoid sin by not invoking God's name. Instead, they swore by other names associated with God to conceal their own falsehood and avoid sin against God. Therefore, the Lord rejected the habitual and hypocritical oaths that Jews easily committed at that time. He rebuked the degeneration of man's true oaths into tools of deceit among the Jews. The Pharisees of that time were using oaths as instruments to deceive others. That is, the mindset that oaths not made in God's name need not be kept was widespread. Therefore, in their oaths, they sought substitutes other than God and treated such oaths with neglect. Instead of invoking God's name, they swore by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or the head. Knowing their intentions, the Lord rebuked them, commanding them not to swear carelessly. Thus, he also forbade swearing by heaven, for heaven is God's throne. They had habitually substituted heaven's name to avoid invoking God's own. At that time, the Lord declared that heaven is God's throne, the space where God reigns. The Lord stated that swearing by the name of heaven, which is God's throne, is equivalent to swearing by God's name. He rebuked them for neglecting their promises, thinking that since they swore by the name of heaven, it was not God's name. The Pharisees also swore by the earth. Then the Lord declared that earth is the footstool of God. Therefore, swearing by the name of the earth is also swearing by the name of God. Likewise, since Jerusalem is the city of God, swearing by its name is also swearing by the name of God. Furthermore, the statement, "Nor shall you swear by your head," means that since God created the head, he counts even the number of hairs on it. A person cannot make their own head white or black, thus, swearing by the name of the head is not a true oath. Swearing by one's head is likewise swearing by God's name. Ultimately, every oath we take is made in God's name. This is because our oaths contain vows directed towards God and promises made within human relationships. Ultimately, we must demonstrate the reliability of our own words. When we show reliability in our own words, there is no need to swear by God's name or to swear by other things to add credibility to what we say. When we swear by God's name and then fail to keep that promise, it is akin to taking God's name in vain. There are times when we intend to keep our promise, but due to our lack of strength and wisdom, we are unable to fulfill it. Therefore, it is wise not to swear by God's name. Not swearing is wisdom. If our words carry trust, we need only say yes or no. There is no need for us to swear by God's name, or by heaven, earth, or our own names. Swearing beyond simply saying yes or no to give credibility to our words stems from the lusts of the flesh. That is, it comes from wrong motives, not pure intent. We must be able to give credibility to our words. Some people are believed no matter what they say, while others cannot inspire trust no matter what they say. The most precious asset a person possesses in life is trustworthiness. Those who possess trust may gain honor or wealth through any endeavor undertaken with that trust. Trust is the fulfillment of promises. Keeping one's promises regarding credit card usage is trustworthiness. However, if one consistently fails to meet monthly credit card obligations, they will lose the trust of the bank, resulting in a decline in creditworthiness. Similarly, failing to gain trust while living among people is evidence of a deficiency in one's character. The Lord fulfilled every promise he made, paying whatever price was required. He declared he would establish the church, and true to his word, he paid the price with his life and blood to establish the church. Therefore, we too must be faithful in our words. When we do so, God will be glorified, and we will be recognized before men. Therefore, I pray in the name of the Lord that you may stand as a man of God, faithful in word, in this age.